Module 5 Part B, Conflict Management. This video will cover the meaning of conflict, types of conflict in the workplace, stages of conflict, the conflict management strategies, and tips on dealing with conflicts. What is conflict? Most times when we hear conflict, we picture fights and other forms of violence as seen in this picture. While these could be the consequences of a mishandled conflict, that is not all there is to conflict. In fact, conflict is simply any disagreement between or among people who have opposing needs, ideas, beliefs, values, or goals. When two people disagree on a thing, that is conflict. So you see, conflict is inevitable because individuals are different and don't always agree on everything. But this is not always a bad thing. It simply means that conflict presents an opportunity to look at things from a different perspective, learn something new, understand others better, and perhaps come up with a more creative solution to a problem. However, when we don't address conflict effectively, it could then lead to these negative consequences. Let's look at the different kinds of conflicts that could exist in a workplace. First, we have personality conflict. This kind of conflict occurs due to personality differences. For example, one team member is very social and expects others to hang out regularly, while the other is introverted and prefers to stay indoors. This could lead to a clash at some point. 2, we have interdependence conflict. This is a disagreement that occurs when two or more people rely on one another to complete a task or reach a goal. For example, when the social media manager needs a particular design from the graphic designer for his social media post, and perhaps there is a delay, this could lead to some form of tension or conflict. Next, tax conflict. This occurs when there is a difference in opinion about how a tax should be done. For example, instead of sending an email to a client, a supervisor might expect the team member to schedule a call or meet one-on-one with the client just to pass the same message. And these differences in approach might actually lead to conflict. There is also role conflict. This occurs when there are contradictory demands placed on a person regarding their roles. For example, a person was hired as a content writer and now the person is being asked to design graphics. This difference could lead to a clash. Another type of conflict is the power conflict. This is the disagreement that occurs in relation to authority or influence exercised within the workplace. Take an example. A conflict might arise when an individual who has been in an organization for a longer period now has to answer to a recently promoted supervisor. But regardless of the type of conflict, most workplace conflicts evolve through 5 stages. The first stage is called latent conflict. This is the initial stage where the factors leading to conflict exist but have not yet surfaced. It is the calm before the storm. The second stage is perceived conflict. Here, individuals or groups become aware that there is a form of tension building up or a form of disagreement. And this eventually leads to the felt conflict. In this case, individuals begin to feel a certain way due to the disagreement or perceived difference or injustice. It refers to the emotional response triggered by the perceived conflict because it gets personal at this point in time. So, the next stage is when the conflict begins to manifest conflict. In this stage, the conflict becomes visible and tangible, and parties begin to express their displeasure. Note that conflict can be manifested in a cordial manner, but sometimes this stage of conflict might involve arguments, disputes, or open hostility between or among the individuals. The way manifest conflict is handled will influence the final stage, which is the conflict aftermath. The final stage occurs after the conflict has been addressed or resolved, either constructively or destructively. The aftermath of a well-handled conflict produces positive consequences, but the aftermath of a destructive conflict could bring about resentment, broken relationships, or other forms of negative consequences. This is why it is important to understand these stages so that we are better equipped to manage and resolve conflict effectively. So what are some strategies for managing conflicts? 1. Compromise. This is a half-win, half-lose situation. In this case, both sides agree to meet in the middle. Here is a simple example. Imagine a situation where you and your colleague is trying to decide on the color of outfit to wear to work the next day. You prefer blue and your colleague prefers red. One way to compromise is by agreeing that you both will wear a blue shirt and a red trouser. This way, you both win and lose halfway. Note that compromise is good for temporary resolutions or when both parties have equal powers in the situation. 2. Accommodating. This is a lose-win situation. Here, one side gives up to the other just to maintain peace. In the illustration I gave earlier, instead of trying to compromise, you simply go with wearing red, a red outfit completely, in order to satisfy your colleague. This strategy is actually good for keeping a relationship intact and allowing peace to reign. It is commonly said that not all battles are worth fighting, and this is important to remember in a work environment. However, if accommodating strategy is done all the time only by one party, such person might begin to become resentful in the long run. 3. Avoidance. This is a lose-lose situation. No party wins because the conflict is completely ignored. Both sides simply refrain from addressing the issue altogether. In the same illustration I gave, avoidance might mean that neither of them or neither of you wear the colors. You simply ignore and pretend like the issue never came up. Although avoidance can lead to greater conflicts in the future, it can be good to utilize when the issue is something minor or not worth discussing at the moment, or when one or both parties are not in the best frame of mind, or perhaps when more time is required to process a thought or compose oneself before addressing a particular situation. 4. Competition. This is the opposite of accommodating. It is a win-lose situation. Instead of allowing the other party to have its way, you decide that your way will be adopted instead. Hence, one party wins at the expense of the other. In the outfit color illustration I gave earlier, you insist that both of you will wear red, and it happens that way. Note that this strategy is good for emergencies or when immediate decisions are needed and there is not enough time to go back and forth about the issue. The final strategy is collaboration. This is a win-win situation. Hence, both sides work together to find a resolution that meets the needs of both parties. In the same example, you can both decide to wear the outfit of your choice. You wear your blue and your colleague wears red, and you both are happy with the outcome. As much as this is a great strategy, it might not work all the time. Hence, it is important to assess the situation carefully and then choose the best strategy to utilize per time. Again, competing is a win-lose situation, collaborating is a win-win situation, compromising is a half-win, half-lose situation, avoiding is a lose-lose situation, and accommodating is a lose-win situation. Lastly, here are some tips for dealing with conflict within a work team. 1. Engage in active listening. Also, show empathy and understanding. Seek common grounds. This will help all parties to feel valued. Communicate effectively. Feel free to express yourself in a polite way and listen to the perspective of others. 5. Collaborate and compromise when needed. 6. Get third-party assistance if the parties are unable to reach a reasonable agreement with one another. Also, practice emotional intelligence. Focus on the issue and not the personalities. Someone can do something bad and not be a bad person. Focus on addressing the situation and not attacking the person. 9. Learn from the conflict. Like I mentioned earlier, conflict can help us to learn more about one another or more about a particular situation. So commit to learning. And lastly, establish clear agreements. Let all parties be aware and comfortable about the resolution. Also, let there be a clear roadmap on how to address similar situation or similar conflict in the future. Finally, let's test your knowledge. What is conflict? List 3 types of conflict. What are the stages of conflict? What is the difference between compromising and collaborating when managing conflict? In what circumstance is it okay to utilize the avoidance strategy when dealing with conflict? 6. Mention 4 tips for dealing with conflict in a team. And this brings us to the end of Module 5. I trust that you have learned a lot from this lesson and all the previous modules. Here are a few next steps. Do not forget to explore the case study and the external resource section to learn more about this topic. Also, take the Module 5 test to complete this segment. You might also want to review your handbook and all the previous case studies to prepare for your final exam. When you're ready, take your final exam and get your certificate. Once again, congratulations on coming this far.